Jahas. Ja takaisin täällä tiivistämössä. Me puhutaan paljon kestävästä kehityksestä, tulevaisuuden varmistamisesta ja se vaatii sitä, että me ihmiset tullaan yhteen. Jotta me voidaan tulla yhteen, meidän tulee kommunikoida toinen toistemme kanssa ja se luo omia haasteitansa, koska meillä jokaisella on niin eri taustat, mistä me tullaan. Jotta me voidaan sitten sisällyttää erinäisiä todellisuuksia saman pöydän ääreen, samaan tilaan, meidän pitää pystyä myös olemaan ok epämukavuuden kanssa. Onhan se helpompaa joskus, kun on porukkaa kasassa ja kaikki vaan myötäilee ja taputtelee toisiinsa selkää, mutta se ei loppujen lopuksi auta meitä kehittymään hirveästi. Auttaako? Niin siksi, mä en nyt enää sen enempää lössötä tässä, mutta seuraava puheenvuoro on Ilmastokriisi ratkaistaan yhdessä. Ja tämä puheenvuoro tullaan osittain käymään virtuaalisesti. Meillä on osallistuja muista maista, mutta tämän juontaa Liselott Lindström. Ja pikemmittä puheitta, tervetuloa seuraavat puhujat.
Tervetuloa kaikki tänne tiivistämöön ja myös etäyhteyksien päässä mukana olevat. Tänään me keskustellaan siitä, miten ilmastonmuutos vaikuttaa kehittyviin maihin ja mitä tälle asialle voidaan tehdä. Ja tämä keskustelu käydään englanniksi. So a warm welcome to all of you both here and online. Today we're discussing how climate change is affecting the world's most vulnerable people and what can be done about it. And what role can Finnish development cooperation have to prepare, adapt and mitigate the effects of climate change. And my name is Liselott Lindström. I'm a journalist from Finland, but I used to live in Kenya for 4 years. And with me and us discussing today, we have Izidine Pinto, who is a top researcher on this topic. He's from Mozambique, but currently he works at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. And he's also known for being one of the authors of the 6th IPCC climate report. Welcome, Izidine.
Thank you for having me.
And here on the stage with me, I have Sara Nyman. She's a Finnish activist and vice chair of Finland's government climate policy roundtable activities. Welcome, Sara.
Yes, thank you.
So we're all together going to start by watching a short video together about how climate change is visible in Kenya and in Nepal, who both are partner countries of Finland.
Climate change is visible in our country through inconsistent weather patterns. This is evident through the rainfall pattern we've been witnessing of late in our country, and this has really affected the farmer, which has affected our food security.
बचपन 56 साल गरेर तेरो अनि चाहिँ यहाँ पहिरालहरु माथि पहिरालहरु त्यहाँ पहिरा लरेर अनि चाहिँ यो माथि अनि चाहिँ बगर धेरै ढुङ्गा धेरै बगेर्नु छ त्यही भनाले अहिले पानी अलि गड्यो नि तल आसन गड्यो त्यो आसन गरेको हुनाले पहिलाको जति पानी छैन अहिले पानी कम छ हेर्नु त्यही पनि अब हाम्रो लागि त अब यो डेरेमा हाम्रो साइडमा त हिजो पानी ठुलो तर अलिकति यस्तै छ हजुर पहिला त यत्रो पानी हुन्थ्यो अलिकति यो अलिकति यो माथिबाट पहिरा लरेर अनि चाहिँ खोला अनि चाहिँ ठुला आएर अनि चाहिँ सबै ढुङ्गा ल्याएर माथि उच्च बनाइदियो आसन डोब्यो हेर्नु पानी अब यसो पहिला उची पहिरा लरिन्थ्यो पानी पोखल्थ्यो पहिला लरिसकेपछि पानी कम पर्यो हेर्नुहोस् अहिले झन् अहिले बढी पहिरा झन् बढी लडेको छ रहेछ अहिले के गर्ने हुनु अब यो तल खोलामा अलि फरक त गाडी पनि लागेको छ.
So, mudslides, inconsistent rain patterns are some effects of climate change. And I'm going to start with a question to you, Izidine. How is climate change visible in Mozambique? You're a researcher, and Mozambique is your home country. What effects do you see there?
Thank you. With climate change, one effect of climate change is changing in the patterns of extreme weather events, and we are seeing that everywhere. In every land region, we are seeing more irregular and more intense heavy precipitation events. And Mozambique is no exception because we are experiencing more catastrophic storms and also more intense tropical cyclones which have a negative effects on our society. And one example of this is in the beginning of this year in We had the first tropical cyclone that affected Mozambique, Madagascar, and also Malawi, causing severe humanitarian impacts. And a recent study found that the extreme precipitation associated with this particular tropical storm, Anna, was influenced by climate change.
And Sara, how are young people here in Finland feeling about climate change? In Africa, it's already a reality, but is it something for young people in Finland, something they can relate to, or does it feel like something far away?
Yes, I think that we live in the Arctic area, so we don't see the climate change today, but I think we are a very, very critical area, and that is why with Finland people, we have some particular ships to this issue. But I think in Finland, the climate movement has been so active and visible. I think it was pretty much honor of it that, for example, our latest parliamentary elections was so climate elections campaign and like this. But so according to the latest Finland Youth Barometer, youth are in Finland surprisingly optimistic, but still the ability of decision makers to solve the problem is not very high. And of course we have the idea that Finland youth we can do it, but it's so clear that that's happened. But I think it's optimistic, but maybe nothing we see here, so it happens somewhere else.
Yeah, so in Finland, we don't really see climate change. Why is it that climate change affects the southern parts of the world more than the northern?
Climate change affects every country independently of geographical location, either southern or northern. And one thing to consider is the vulnerability of the people that are affected by climate change. And in the southern parts, we see that we are exposed to many weather patterns, and also the vulnerability or the capacity to cope with this changing is very high in the southern parts of the hemisphere. So when there is an extreme weather event, it affects us, but we take a long time to recover from that impact. So this is how the difference between the two hemispheres is the high vulnerability that we have compared to the northern hemisphere.
Yes, as you say, like the climate crisis doesn't treat us all in an equal way. And I've had the pleasure to speak to the Ugandan climate change activist Vanessa Nakate, and she said that, we're all facing the same storm, but we're in very different boats. And I was in Mozambique in 2019. You mentioned hurricanes, and then right after the hurricane Idai, which caused a lot of devastation. And then there was talk about these flood warning systems that some people thought might have helped to save some people, but then again, some of the people said, even if we had been warned, we would have nowhere to go. Where would we go? How can these people who are so vulnerable, what can we do to protect them from the effects of climate change?
Yes, that's true that the early warning systems are not very effective, but currently there's been investments to improve the effectiveness of the early warning systems in Mozambique, for example. But the problem is the population doesn't know what to do with that information. And one way to overcome that is increase campaigns of awareness to tell people what they should do in the case of a tropical cyclone that's approaching. And also the level of education to be able to understand this kind of message is very low. So one way to overcome this is to provide more awareness and tell people what they should do in case they receive a message that the tropical cyclone is coming, and that they should move from one location to a safe place.
So equality is a problem here, and Sara, fair transition is a bit of a buzzword now when we're talking about environmental policy and politics. What does the term climate justice mean to you?
I think that climate justice means that every decision, every law is climate policy. It's cross-section, not so separate island somewhere. And that also means that climate policy social dimension and our responsibility it affects in Finland or in the Northern Europe. I think it's not the same for everyone, but according to their carrying capacity is what our shall do. I think that Finnish people towards the far transition are quite selective, and we talk a lot about the price of gas and like this, but not its effects in solidarity doesn't extend for future generations or people in somewhere else on the land. So this is our problem, and I think that is something that we must do solve if we want solve the climate crisis.
And Izidine, you've said that local communities actually often have solutions to these problems, but they lack financial resources in putting them into action. Can you give us some examples? You mentioned early warning systems. Can you give us some other examples of solutions that have sprung from local communities?
Thank you. Yes, local solutions are very important. And for example, currently, one of the ways to mitigate climate change are what we call natural-based solutions. And one of these examples are, for example, restoring coastal wetlands and also improving management of land. And these will help increase carbon storage in many places at the local level.
Do you feel then that the local communities are listened to when it comes to trying to solve these problems?
Some local communities, they listen, and others have more pressing issues, social issues that we currently have. That's why the climate issue is not very important for some locations in the country, because there are more poverty issues or social issues that need to be solved at the very short term.
And when it comes to these local solutions that these communities might have, do you feel like donor countries like Finland is listening to what is actually needed on the ground?
Definitely, because we are seeing also there are some programs and some investments in mangrove restoration, for example, in the northern parts of Mozambique.
That's good to hear. And Sara, what action would you want to see from Finnish politicians so that they would actually include and listen to young people when it comes to climate policy?
Young people message it's clear, listen to science and act on it. I think this is the essential, not so complex, but of course in reality this is much more difficult and multi-level discussion. One essential point is to extend the scope of the decision making in era of climate crisis for maximum of 4 years. Politics is not sustainable. I think we need admission for young people to decision making. Of course, it's important that youth have their own organization or own group, but it's not much more. And we need to make sure that if youth are also where people power is, because that is where our future will be decided, and youth must be here.
Do you feel that youth are respected when it comes to this? Are opinions of young people respected?
Yes, I think it's very difficult question, because I have no one to answer this, but yes, I think it's better and better in every day, but not so much yet.
And Izidine, what role do you think that development cooperation can play in mitigating the effects of the climate crisis, for instance, in Mozambique?
Yes. So I'll say that we cannot stop climate change unless all countries come together, not only Mozambique. So all countries must come together to mitigate the effects of climate change, and also in this way reducing greenhouse gases emissions globally. And only in this way we could possibly reach the target of 1.5 degrees Celsius agreed in the Paris Agreement. And this will avoid catastrophic events. And Mozambique, for example, has submitted its national determined contributions. And these NDCs are a mechanism with the goals to reduce national emissions and to adapt to the impacts of climate change. So in this way, development cooperation could support Mozambique to achieve these goals by providing, for example, knowledge exchange, also providing some resources and also capacity building and among other possibilities that might exist.
And you are a climate researcher. Are you worried at this point?
Yes, I'm very worried for me and also worried for the generations that are to come, because climate change is occurring and it's a fact, and it's having a catastrophic effects in our society.
At this point, I say a big thank you to you, Izidine Pinto and Sara Nyman here on the stage with me. A big round of applause for them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we are going to continue now on a slightly different theme and with new guests here on the stage and on the screen. I'm waiting for the next guest to come up. It's difficult. There's a big door there to come through. So climate change causes extreme weather and increases poverty, especially in the global south. We heard that. However, a lot of people are already working hard both to mitigate climate change and also help people adapt to the effects of it. And one of them is Patricia Kombo. She's a Kenyan change maker and she's with us online from my old hometown, Nairobi. Karibu sana, Patricia.
Hello.
Hi. And Patricia, she's globally known for her organization Patri initiative that helps in educating women and children in fighting climate change. And here with me on the stage, it's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Jan Wahlberg, a diplomat at the Foreign Ministry of Finland and also Finland's climate ambassador. Welcome, Jan.
Thanks. Hello, everybody.
So we're again going to start with watching a video where people from Finland's partner countries share their thoughts on what should be done to fight climate change.
Eu acho que a responsabilidade parte de nós. Não esperemos que alguém venha fazer isso por nós. A população local é que tem que preservar o meio ambiente para que amanhã seja para um futuro, para os nossos filhos viverem e crescerem, saberem que não pode se abater as árvores.
This climate change issue, I think, is a community effort that everyone pitches in to make the environment better for the next person. You sensitize everyone, not just a certain group of people, just everybody to be able to make it better for the next person.
Nós precisamos, de facto, começar pelas bases. As bases ao invés de desenhar o projeto a um nível topo, temos que começar pelas comunidades e perceber e explicar qual é a importância de se corta uma árvore para produzir um saco de carvão, então é importante que plante 3 no mínimo. A responsabilidade de proteção do meio ambiente é exclusivamente do governo.
So, Patricia, I'm going to start with you. On the video, we heard some people from both Kenya, your country, and also Mozambique talk about responsibility in this fight. And you have said that there's been enough talk and conferences about climate change, and now it's time for action. What action would you like to see, and by whom?
Thank you very much. And when I say we need climate action, it's because we've had a lot of conferences, and every global leader, every young person, everyone really understands the causes of climate crisis, and they understand and they know better the solutions. But the policies are actually on the books and are not being actualized. And as my colleague has said, climate action is a collective responsibility, from a grassroots person to young person to international to global leaders and to everyone, because the mother planet is our home for everyone, no matter your social and no matter where you are. Mother Earth really connects us. And what really I would like to see is real climate action, translating the policies, translating the negotiation, translating what the science says into real action, and to making sure we attain net zero, we shift to clean energy, we actually move into a lot of adaptation and mitigation, and more so to the people at the grassroots, because they feel the impacts of climate change more than anyone else. So enough. We've had a lot of talks. We understand better what is supposed to be done. So people should now translate. And the next conference actually should not happen in a conference room. It should actually happen in a forest, in an ecosystem where leaders will be actually restoring degraded ecosystem, because from the boardrooms, we are not getting any changes, but people at the grassroots actually, what they are doing is more than what global leaders are doing on the conferences. Thank you.
That's hard words. Jan, I guess you have been sitting in a lot of conference rooms and talking about this. What kind of action is Finland taking to do something?
Thanks, and very inspiring, Patricia. I think it's good points you're making. I'll take a few examples. We had a big climate meeting in Lahti, which is 100 kilometers north from Helsinki, last week. We had quite a few climate leaders, and I think it was the first big meeting after Glasgow. It was on adaptation. We need adaptation. Africa needs more adaptation, and that's the big theme of this year's climate negotiations. And we were leading kind of the example that what does it mean that we promised to double our adaptation finance by having this meeting in Lahti. Talking about forest, I think next week we will participate in Stockholm in a meeting with like-minded countries, how to take forward the forest agenda. And like you said, we should discuss it together, not only the governments, but that's one example. We are one of the governments who think how to take action on the forest agenda, on the promises we made in Glasgow, and that's going on next week. The previous speakers, they talked a lot about what's happening in Mozambique, the early warning, early action. And I'll mention a third big Finnish theme. I think it's meteorology and then early action, early warning. We are working a lot with also African countries on how to capacitate their meteorological agencies and also involving the Red Cross and see how the alarm systems works. So I think my highlights would be championing on adaptation finance based on Glasgow, and then on forests, and then the third one on what we are doing with methodology.
And Patricia, in your work as a change maker, you work a lot with including women. What's the role of women in mitigating and adapting to climate change, and is it somehow different from the role of men?
Okay, I come from a continent where it is the role of a woman to feed the community and to feed the children. So women bear a lot of burden, going and tilting to ensure that their children get healthy and nutritious food. So every day they interact with nature more than any other gender in cultivating, collecting water, because it is their role to collect water, to go for firewood, to cook, and also to tilt in the farm. So because they understand the need in their communities and they understand that children must be fed, every day they work tirelessly in ensuring that they benefit from the land, and they work every single inch ensuring that they protect that what feeds them, that is the land. So women play a critical role in ensuring that our ecosystems are well conserved, that the land is healthy and the soil it's healthy, so as to ensure the next rain season they will harvest, because they have to feed the women. And women have this compassion. They feel that Mother Earth is just like a child to them. And that's why you find in Africa, 70% of work in the farm is done by women. And they work tirelessly to ensure they reduce impacts of climate crisis, because you can bear with me the pain of a mother looking as the house is being washed away, the pain of a mother watching a child dying or getting malnutrition. So because of this and because of connecting with nature, women actually are the custodians of nature. They do whatever they do to protect. And a lot of restoration, a lot of work on restoring degraded ecosystem, you'll find it's the women who are doing. And since women spend time in the farm, you find they are working tirelessly to ensure that they grow trees, they practice practices which will promote ecosystem, that will promote sustainability. And women have these huge power. When they are united, actually they do a lot of milestones. And I'll give you a short scenario of how the Green Belt movement came to be. It was a movement by women because they had the pain of collecting firewood. They walked long distances looking for water. And because of the need that they saw, they came together to say enough is enough. We must solve this and for all. And through the late Professor Wangari Maathai, we saw how women really transformed from a grassroots movement to international and a global movement. So women play a critical role in ensuring that our ecosystems are safe, the climate and weather patterns are consistent, because it is their role to feed communities, and it's their role to ensure that their families are well kept from the dangers of climate crisis. So in everything that we do, without a woman, actually restoration, it's like a nightmare. So that's why I say every time, in every conference, in every restoration work, a woman must be there, because they understand better the needs of nature. Just like they understand the needs of a child, they understand land, nature, ecosystem more than any other person, because they interact on a daily basis. Thank you.
Oh, that's very well put. And Jan, Finland has promised to increase climate finance. That means support for climate work in developing countries like Kenya. So why does Finland have to finance climate work in these countries?
You mentioned before, I think her name is Nakate, said we are all in the same boat. So I think one point is that we cannot solve the crisis country by country. So there needs to be finance. And I think it's related also, you made a question to Sara on climate justice. It's Africa only, I think, is responsible of 4% of the emissions, discounting land use. It's a little bit technical, but it's the continent that suffers most, and it's not the cause of the most serious emissions. So I think we have a duty to finance climate. I would also say that it's not about only our bilateral financing, because our climate finance is about 200 million per year nowadays. That's the level. And we need, we are talking about 100 billions and the trillions when we talk about the private sector. So we need also to generate the discussion in multilateral development banks, how to increase climate finance, and also engage the private sector. So it's kind of a multi-layered task for Finland. It's to pay our contribution, but also rally around the other players and the private sector.
Mm. And Patricia, what kind of support do you think is needed from countries like Finland to countries like Kenya?
Oh, thank you very much. And I like what you have said, financing, climate financing. But my greatest concern is because a lot of the financing, the climate financing that we get, they are channeled through government. And I will tell you, we've had policies and our leaders not really committed. Now I can say it is not business as usual. And what would like countries like Finland to do is to support grassroots nature-led initiatives. The money should be channeled to the people at the grassroots, people who are leading in innovations and in nature-led initiatives to boost and to scale up. And through supporting grassroots initiatives, they're actually empowering communities. They are not only doing restoration and climate-related work, but they are changing livelihoods. Because as you've said, our greatest problem in Africa is on drought, food, and land. Africa does not emit a lot of problems, but it is geared towards food system. So the money should be channeled to the people who need it and not through the government, because sometimes through the government, it does not reach the people who really need that money. And again, what we'd like the countries to do, rich countries to do, not only Finland alone, but other countries, to feel in their hearts what Africa is feeling. If you fail to feel in your heart the pain that Africa is feeling, they will actually continue investing in so many unsustainable projects. They will actually not reduce their emissions, but it must become part of your emotions. They must feel in their hearts, will this action really contribute to a negative impact? Will it cost a livelihood of a certain person in Africa? And once they have that emotional connection, actually they'll transform their emissions. They will bring projects that will really empower communities. And another thing, countries should not come to Africa to exploit our natural resources, but rather they should come and help communities become resilient, to stand bold and say this is actually what will progress. And again, they've said about finance, we really, really appreciate the work that people are doing, but do not forget that young people are the current and future generation. When the finance is being channeled, they should actually allocate some budget to support young people in the green economy and help them transit to the green economy, because we might have a gap where we have a generation that does not understand ecosystem, that does not understand the green economy. So the support should cut across from the grassroots to women, men, and to the government. Thank you.
And Jan, like in recent years, at least in Finland, there's been a lot of talk that we shouldn't talk about aid anymore. It's cooperation. That's the new buzzword. But what do you think, in the name of cooperation, what can Finland learn from Africa when it comes to combating climate change?
To pick on what you said, Patricia, I think in a way you're right that this is a partnership, and we talk in climate world, we call them just energy transition partnerships, and we are building them officially, but I think we need to do them also with the grassroots and not only in kind of a COP meetings. You know, in Glasgow we decided to give 8.5 billion to South Africa to renew, they are polluting company. But like you said, I think it's what we need is this kind of I would call it like a social inclusive dialogue between Europe and Africa, and you need to include the youth and you need to include women. You said it very well. They have the knowledge. Also, I think I work quite a lot with the disabilities inclusion. It has to do with the early warning, early action. All actors, indigenous people. So I think it's kind of a broader agenda of what I would call climate change and human rights. And here, one leeway Finland has, we are a member of the Human Rights Council in Geneva, and I think one of the things I want to work as a climate ambassador is the theme of climate change and human rights. And I think it links to what you were saying, Patricia, that there is things we can do together. It's not about aid, it's about cooperation and finding common solutions.
And helping grassroots instead of governments, as Patricia was saying. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I want to ask you one more question, Patricia, just if you can answer very shortly. You know, the older generations are talking so nicely about how, oh, it's so nice when the young ones are inspired. What can we do to inspire the older generations to take climate change seriously?
What I can say in a nutshell, bring reality to them and let them just understand food does not come from Uber Eats, and climate change is just like a wound in the skin. How you treat your wound to heal faster, it will determine. But if you want to continue tormenting your wound, it will never heal. So what I can say, let's take Mother Earth as a wound, and it's our responsibility to make sure our wound heals faster, because we know the medicine, and the medicine is climate adaptation and mitigation and inclusive efforts for everyone.
Thank you so much, Patricia. I love what you said before about feeling the pain that Africa is feeling, and I think that's something all of us can take with us today. So thank you so much, Patricia Kombo, change maker, joining us from Nairobi, Kenya, and Jan Wahlberg, Finland's climate ambassador, here on the stage in Helsinki. And thank you to all of you who have followed this discussion, both here and online as well. And for those of you who are with us here physically, we're going to continue the discussion over in the Lämpiö, so you are all very welcome to join us there. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Kiitoksia. Läpi historian on ollut tiettyjä kansoja, maita, jotka on riistänyt. Ja tästä meillä on syntynyt niin sanottuneet kehittyneet maat, mitä ikinä kehittynyt tarkoittaakaan. Ja valitettavasti maat, joilta on riistetty aikojen läpi, kärsii tällä hetkellä ne suurimmat vaikutukset ilmastokriisistä. Ja mitä oli vähän puhetta tuossa aikaisemmin, että mitä me täällä Suomessa sit voidaan tehdä. Me asutaan kuitenkin kaikki samalla planeetalla, saman ilmakehän alla, joten ne teot, mitä me täällä tehdään, vaikuttaa ympäri maailmaa globaalisti. Ja valitettavasti edelleenkin Suomessa, onneksi tämän vuoden aikana, on noussut paljon keskustelua siitä, että miten inklusiivinen ympäristöliike sit oikeasti onkaan. miten esimerkiksi täällä Suomessakin me otetaan erinäisiä todellisuuksia, jälleen kerran mainitsen erinäisiä ajatuksia huomioon, jotta me pystyttäisiin kaikki kuluttamaan vastuullisemmin, eikä se jäisi vain pienen piirin pariin. Mutta otetaan jälleen kerran taukoa, koska musiikki soi tuossa ihan vieressä, ruokaa juomaa on tarjolla ja me ollaan täällä tänään tiivistämössä puheohjelmien parissa kello 6 asti. Ja samanaikaisesti alla Siiphuulilla on musiikkia ohjelmaa myös nuorisolle tarjolla. Temppelin aukion kirkossa on kello 6 mahtava konsertti kanssa, että jos olette livestreamin puolella, sinne voi kanssa mennä. Ja sitten Kauppatorilla on kanssa tapahtumaa, erinäisiä järjestöjä ja yrityksiä on paikalla, että siellä pääsee kanssa keskustelemaan ihan kaksin keskin alan toimijoiden kanssa.
Mutta nyt tosiaan pieni tauko, sanoisin semmoinen reilu 10 minuuttia. Sen jälkeen puhutaan ruuasta ja vastuullisesta ruoan tuotannosta ja sellaisesta käsitehirviöstä kuin systeeminen muutos. Mitä se tarkoittaa? Se tarkoittaa, se selvinnee sitten vähän ajan päästä, mieletön cliffhangeri tähän kohtaan. Mutta siis ruoasta ja vastuullisesta ruoantuotannosta hetkisen kuluttua.